Guys, I don't have a lot of time here. I would like to talk to you about today's government shutdown very quickly. Not a major presentation here. We just need to talk about it. Today at 12:01 a.m., the government is now closed for business. The Senate was unable to reach an agreement on our spending, and so the government has officially shut down. And of course, based on our long and storied Revolutionary War history, who was happier but the British?
I'm Sally Bundock. We begin.
Look at her. She's practically grinning. She's so pleased to announce the U.S. government shutdown.
The U.S. government has shut down for the first time in 6 years after lawmakers failed to reach an agreement on extending federal spending.
Yes, the first time in 6 years we have an actual government shutdown. Again, these are relatively rare, that they've become more and more common as our government has gotten more and more partisan, more divided, more unable to reach an agreement on anything, really, but especially budgets. 6 years ago was Trump, by the way, which was the last time we had a government shutdown. Though we did have one under Obama that was slightly shorter. The longest one ever is the one in 2018-19, 35 days under Trump. We'll see how long this new one lasts. But in the meantime, the government is closed for business starting today. Now, what does that mean? The main impact is all the workers that will be furloughed. That's include 89% of the Environmental Protection Agency, 87% of our education department, 81% of our commerce department, 76% of our labor department, 71% of our housing and urban development, 59% of our energy department, 49% of our agriculture department. All these employees will be furloughed. If you're like me, not like me, really, I did know this, but if you're like most Americans who Googled the term furlough today after it spiked off the chart, it just means laid off temporarily. You are unpaid and not working, and you can come back whenever they figure this shit out. That's the idea. That is the idea of a furlough. And the numbers are pretty stark. 750,000, 750,000 federal workers can be furloughed in the next few days or weeks or so. People are saying vacation, but there's a little bit more to the story. Now, again, this is pretty crazy because this is what our government runs on, a lot of this stuff. Now, the very essential stuff does remain working, but even that has caveats. So let me explain. For example, if you're going traveling, you might notice longer lines at the airport, facilities closures at national parks, and of course, losses in tourism revenue. This is because not only are a lot of employees in the FAA getting furloughed, or the TSA, but the ones that still have to work aren't getting paid. That means if you are traveling anytime soon, it will be with air traffic controllers that are working unpaid. TSA agents working unpaid. We have people working for nothing and people who are just not able to work at all. So it's gonna be pretty strained, the services of government, until this is figured out. Now, at a high level, here's what's happening. Our government every year is supposed to pass a budget that decides what we are going to do and what we're going to spend money on. Maybe some of that money goes to air traffic controllers, right? We have gotten so unable to pass a budget on time that for decades now, we have resorted to a thing called a continuing resolution. This is basically like a short-term band-aid that says, okay, if we can't figure out a new budget, we'll use last year's budget until we can figure it out for a few weeks. So the last time we actually passed a budget on time was 1997. And then every year since then, we sort of kicked the bucket into the middle of the year, sometimes throughout the whole year. So now in 2025, we've gotten to the point where we've done a continuing resolution the entire previous year. We have not gotten anywhere closer to passing a new budget. And so this time, when they decided to kick the can one more time, finally the vote did not pass. And there's a reason for that, and I'm going to explain it. And it comes down to the difference between Republicans and Democrats on what they want out of this continuing resolution. This is how everybody voted. As you'll notice, mostly Republicans voted to keep the continuing resolution and keep the government funded. Mostly Democrats voted against it to break it. And why do they choose now and why is this happening? I'm going to explain. There were a couple partisan flippers here, okay? For example, Catherine Masto from Nevada said President Trump and congressional Republicans are already hurting Nevadans who are dealing with high costs and economic slowdown and a looming healthcare crisis. She said the costly showdown would hand even more power to this reckless administration. Maybe. On the other side, Rand Paul, who voted against the continuing resolution, said the spending levels don't balance the budget and don't come anywhere close. So he flipped. So those are the people that are kind of outliers, but I'm going to give you the main reason. The main issue that is causing this shutdown now is, as always, healthcare. One of the greatest, not bipartisan divides in American history. Obamacare, okay? ACA. The simple way to put it is this. We have the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. It covers like 24 million Americans. And a few years back, we added subsidies that helped make the cost lower for these Americans. These subsidies are going to expire in 2026. So the Republicans would like to pass a, call it clean, continuing resolution, where we keep last year's budget, but do not include these things that expire. The Democrats would like to keep last year's budget, but continue to include these things that expire. That's the idea. So it's a holdout over whether or not we keep these expiring subsidies for people on Affordable Care Act. That is the showdown, okay? Whether or not we keep that in 26 or we don't. The ACA tax credits. This is the center of the government shutdown fight. Now, the numbers I said are real. 24.3 million Americans are currently enrolled in the ACA. Almost all of them use these subsidies. And if they are removed, then their healthcare costs would double to an average of $1,900 from $888. So the people on it very much would like the government to keep the costs of their healthcare lower and keep things going as they are. Republicans like let those expire. That is the situation we find ourselves in. Also, additionally, if these things expire, 4.2 million more Americans will become uninsured, which again, in America is kind of a hard thing to be. It is very hard to be a person working a regular job who has enrolled for the ACA and then loses your insurance and you can't get it. Very expensive, it turns out. That's the boring nitty gritty of the procedure as to why they cannot agree on this vote. Again, this vote is important because while the Democrats do not control the House or the Senate or the judiciary or the presidency, Republicans have complete control of the government in all aspects. This does require 60 votes to pass the continuing resolution and keep our budget going the same as last year. We need 60 votes. Can anybody find 60 votes on their side? It's very difficult. So there's no way to do it with just one party. You need to have a bipartisan thing, which is nearly impossible in America. Normally, the consequences of a government shutdown are so bad that somebody somewhere caves and gives in. But times are a-changing. Both parties think that the public will blame the other party more. That's the core of it. Because it's so politically unpopular to be blamed for a shutdown, most of the time someone always gives in. But right now, nobody's giving in because both sides think it's worse for the other side. So there's a lot of tactics going around. On the Democratic side, Chuck Schumer's trying to, for once in his life, appear somewhat tough, which is a hard look for him, as you can see here.
Hakeem and I sent a letter in late July. We demanded, actually.
You can hear him realizing that I sent a letter sounds very passive. I sent a strongly worded letter. So he changed it to,
Hakeem and I sent a letter in late July. We demanded, actually, to them. We demanded.
But I will say the polling is slightly different. So in previous government shutdowns, like in 2013, Democratic voters strongly favored just compromising with the other side and making sure the shutdown goes on. Now it's much closer. Now a lot of voters would like them to stand on principle and fight for something. There's a lot of push from Democratic voters to be like, show some kind of spine, you're getting rolled over completely. They control all branches of the government and they're just shoving through their agenda. So it's a little bit different this time around. On the other side, the Republicans, which again control these branches of government, are doing everything they can to push their message through these branches of government. So for example, Republicans, because they control government, control the Small Business Administration. And they sent this to small businesses in America that receive government funding and said, make your out of office message this: I am out of office for the foreseeable future because Senate Democrats voted to block a clean federal funding bill leading to a government. They're like making it part of the government. In fact, if you go to the Housing and Urban Development website right now, they put a giant red banner on it saying the radical left are going to shut down the government and inflict massive pain on the American people unless they get their 1.5 trillion wish list of demands, which again is just to continue the current healthcare system. So it's getting pretty crazy all around. Now, listen, it might be tough to decide. Again, I'd say the average American well, maybe they're leaning one way or another right now, but I'd say the average American is polling extremely low on Congress as a whole. It's one of the most disliked institutions in all of government. People are very upset with our inability to get anything done. And in these type of situations, who should we blame? How should we figure it out? Well, we can ask someone about that. Donald Trump in 2013.
First question, Donald, we're having a hell of a time trying to negotiate here in Washington. So tell me, if you were president, what would you do?
Well, very simply, you have to get everybody in a room. You have to be a leader. The president has to lead.
Okay. But who do you blame, Donald?
I hear the Democrats are going to be blamed and the Republicans are going to be blamed. I actually think the president would be blamed. If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the president of the United States. He's the one that has to get people together.
They're not going to be talking who the head of the House was, the head of the Senate, who's running things in Washington. So I really think the pressure is on the president.
I would have to agree. But while this is happening, the president is tweeting out fake AI-generated videos of Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries saying nobody will vote for us because we want the woke. So it's not seeming likely that anyone can actually get in the room and get this figured out. So buckle up, America. It feels like we're in for a long government shutdown. Now, I don't know. In the past, the pressure of this shutdown is so massive and it's so bad for keeping things running. And both parties receive such negative feedback, they usually do figure it out. But if it drags on, because we are in unprecedented times, there is literally no incentive for anybody to go across the aisle and be bipartisan on anything. Everybody just plays to their base and tries to wait it out. So I really don't know how this one's gonna play out. We could be in for a longer shutdown than we expect. And that can have problems. Again, Donald Trump is saying,
we're doing well as a country, so the last thing we want to do is shut it down. But a lot of good can come down from shutdowns. We can get rid of a lot of things that we didn't want, and they'd be Democrat things, but they want open borders. They want men playing in women's sports. They want transgender for everybody. They never stop. They don't learn. We won an election in a landslide. They just don't learn. So we have no choice. I have to do that for the country.
He's doing it for the country because the Democrats want transgender for everything. So we have to fire 750,000 people. And some of them he is threatening to make permanent. Again, as you read here, he is saying there's some Democrat things that during the shutdown we'll be able to get rid of, which is leading to some pretty big lawsuits from major unions that he has threatened to, have mass layoffs during the shutdown. Which, all of this is problematic because it's coming at the same time as we are seeing worse and worse actual job numbers. In fact, government jobs has been one of the few things keeping the jobs numbers up. Government jobs are like the last bastion of job growth. And I want to be very specific about this. So it's going to be hard for us to see the impact of this because the institution that makes the jobs numbers, the BLS, is now shut down. They were supposed to release jobs numbers this Friday. They cannot do it. They will not be doing that. So we are not going to know how the jobs data is going during this government shutdown. However, the ADP jobs numbers, which are private sector, did come out today, and they were horrendous. It was estimated they would grow 50,000 jobs. Instead, we lost 32,000 jobs, an 82,000 job swing. This is not a good direction. This is flashing red. And this is before a government shutdown, which could lead to 750,000 people not getting paid, which means not spending, which means more jobs lost in the economy. Now, there are a few things still open. Air traffic controllers will still be required to work. Some parts of the military are still active. The functioning part of government is still going. For example, you still have to pay your student loans, but your FAFSA associate that can answer questions about your student loans is not going to be available. All the payments are still due, but the people you can talk to get it figured out are not. One thing that I thought was very interesting is that the FTC's antitrust division is shut down, as in they can no longer sue to block mergers. In fact, the one major merger case they have is being shut down. However, the part of the FTC that approves mergers is staying open. So, I'm not kidding, right now, companies are rushing to file their merger requests so they can force it through when there is absolutely no chance it can get blocked, but a very high chance it can get approved. It's open season, baby. It's open season. What an interesting time. Now, look, I really want to go back to this chart real quick and just say, look, obviously I've been very extremely critical of Trump administration thus far. I found like this constant chaos is just leading to worse outcomes in a regular life. And I think at the end of the day, continuing the ACA subsidies makes perfect sense. It's fine. But on a broader macro level, the fact that a year when I was a child, 1997, is the last time we were able to pass a budget on time is fucking crazy. And I think what I'm seeing with this shutdown is that we are, we're through the looking glass on government even pretending to be somewhat effective. Many people in this chat were born after 97, which means their entire lives, our government hasn't even been remotely on time or effective with planning to decide what they're going to spend on for the year. Not only are our budgets massively bloated, massively filled with deficit spending, massively borrowing from the future, but we can't even agree. We can't even vote to agree on anything. And we're getting slower and slower and slower at responding to the real problems that are coming up. I find it to be frankly disgusting. I understand why this shutdown is happening, and I understand, I feel sick with both sides on this one, even though I'm madder at Trump. Just because I find it to be unconscionable that we have to put up with this fucking terrible Congress, this horrendous, useless, incompetent Congress for years and years and years, and the real problems are only getting more severe. It's so frustrating. This is real people's jobs, real people's lives, real people's economy that are getting worse in front of us. And everyone is just fighting on TV and making stupid social media posts for this news cycle that has real impact. I hope this gets figured out and I hope this shutdown ends. But I hope more that we understand that this is like the end of democracy, bro. People are finding that, we read a book recently, Doug Aiden and I, called Breakneck. It was about some of the differences between China and America. And it was a very neutral book. It talked about some really bad stuff in China, some good stuff in China, some bad stuff in America, some good stuff in America. But one thing it made clear is over the past 30, 40 years, America has been unable to do anything big. We have no big projects. We can't pass anything. We've gotten completely gridlocked. Everything is blocked. And so even if you really disagree with the authoritarian regime of China, which I do, but they at least can move, they can build something. They can build high-speed rail. They can make progress. And over time, that makes it harder to justify why you support this system if people can't figure out how to make it work for the regular person. It's just something I've been thinking about more lately. And this is so cartoonish. The way this whole thing is played out is so cartoonish that it's just got me thinking of how, morose I am about it. But I would love to end on a happy note, but I have to go. There's my wife, and I have to go to a triple date. So, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and hopefully we get this shit figured out, man. It's crazy. The market cap, okay? The market cap in green, blue, and black is available today. For a limited time, the market cap, all right? If you wear this hat and you were broken out into your own company, you would be bigger than Nike. That is a fact. All right? Your net worth will reach billions. Highly recommend checking this out on failedcodes.co. In fact, I'm gonna wear it for this presentation.